Okay, today we're gonna talk about components in Figma. We touched on styles and we also looked into libraries, and believe it or not, Figma wouldn't be the kind of application that it is appreciated by so many designers out there if it wouldn't have the component system. Now, if you're new to components, I'm pretty sure you're gonna get a lot of interesting things and value from this short tutorial. And if you're an experienced designer, this might just be a refresher for you. Feel free to jump the playhead from the links in the description below to whatever point interests you. I do have an example that we're gonna use throughout this demo, and it's not your typical example, the one that you see with buttons and other UI elements that you might use in mobile or website design, because I really want to make this exercise approachable those that are completely new to Figma. What we're gonna look into, and now this is a quick breakdown. Number one is why use components, what's the whole idea behind having components. Number two, how to actually create a component, and then where you can find it in order to call it, to bring it in your composition, the relationship between the original component or the parent component and those instances you create, or also called children component. Then we're gonna move further to understand nested components, multi-components, also variants and properties. Plenty of things we need to cover. So with that being said, feel free to like and subscribe the video. It would really help this channel grow. And let's get into the example. If I would check this illustration, I immediately notice that there are some elements that repeat themselves. Number one would be the balconies, number two would be the windows. Though if I would double click and look into my layers panel, yeah, all of them look as rectangle and some number, and doesn't tell me a lot. Again, it's not really useful. And when I would have to let's say to duplicate or to create a new window, I need to select the base of the window and the actual window, the window frame, hit alt or option, click and drag, and then if I would need to make changes, say I want to change the feel of the base element, it would only apply to that one. I would like the change to apply to all of my windows. It makes sense. Same for the balconies. So let's see, a smarter way to work is make them into a component. Once you have the component created, it's enough to call it as many times as you want. So basically the component acts like a factory, and well, in our case it's going to produce window. I need to give them a name. Let's give this one frame name, and to this other rectangle, oh, this can be the window base. And having those two selected, if you right click, you'll find option create component, or you can just use the shortcuts available on your operating system. And again, you can go to the Figma menu, object, create component, or the easiest way is just to click this button up here and the component was created. And they just named it component 1. Basically it took those two layers, put them in the group. If I would have named that group previously with a custom name, it would be that name. Let's change the name over here, and I'm gonna call it window. You can see it has this 4-diamond symbol and this purple border around it. 4-diamond symbol tells us that, hey, this is the master component. Okay, what does that mean? It basically means that whatever component I will create from this one, they will follow in terms of styles. How can I create others from this one? You can just go to assets, and from local components click and drag, and you can see how fast that is. Or you can go here to the tools bar and choose components, search for the component that you're looking for and click once. It will create a new instance. Okay, so that's really nice, speeds things up. Let's see in the layers panel what happened. Well, those newly created, they also have a diamond shape, but it's an empty diamond. So this indicates to us that those are children. Let's try to make a change to the master component. Let's say we decide to change the fill for blue, and you can see all of the other components start to adapt and take the changes from the parent, and that's a time save. And then again, if I would change, let's say, the position or make the base slightly smaller, same thing would happen. Or oh yeah, and let's also make this one a darker blue, and I can try to change the corner radius, the top radius and the bottoms. All of the windows changed, and this is really powerful. Now, why does that happen? Because the children always look up to the parent, to the master, and if the master says, hey, let's make a change, all of them need to follow the order. On the other side, if I would try to make a direct change in one of those instances, yellow again, okay, just the fill, the changes will only stay local to that instance. There's no way for the master or the siblings, yeah, the other children, to know about what changes this one made unless I select it, and from this menu on the right, those three dots, I choose push changes to the main component. Same option would be available if you right click and say main component, push changes to the main component. Well, what happened here? Basically, the child component that made an update pushed those changes to the parent, and the parent then pushed back to the other siblings. Let's go back and let's try, for example, to experiment with Detach. I have again this first one. I right click and I can choose Detach instance, Control Alt D on Windows, or from the same menu on the right, Detach instance. Now basically I instruct that child not to listen to the parent anymore. Yeah, so you can see over here it changed to a regular frame. It's not an instance anymore, an instance of that original component. So when I'm gonna make a change to the parent component, let's go back to blue, yep, or let's go to a purple. This one, which was detached, doesn't know anything about that. You can also have the situation that accidentally you remove the parent. Yeah, someone deleted the master component, though as a good practice is for you to keep the master components in a separate frame, yeah, in a separate file. And now I cannot do that trick with updating in one place and seeing my changes everywhere, but I could select one of those instances if the instance of that, if at least one instance of that master component exists, and choose restore component. And there you have it. It's back and it works as before. Feel free to test it. Great. So now having those, yeah, if I need to make a change here, oh, I could simply yeah, create the instances, and we could actually use auto layout. So how about we group those together and add auto layout now on the vertical, 20 pixels in between. And then by hitting Ctrl C, Ctrl V, I just create as many windows as I need, and having those, I can give it a name of vertical windows and move to my composition, select all those other rectangles that I don't need anymore, remove them, just like that, and bring those changes in my composition. A new set of windows that adapt to the needs of this building. Now let's look at multiple components I mentioned in the beginning of the tutorial. What does that mean? Okay, let's say I have those balconies, and let's say that I also have those large windows. I'm gonna select those two and group them, pull this balcony, and I'm gonna select those two, group them, and call it large window, just to give it a different name. Okay, having both of them selected, I'll go up here and choose create multiple components. Now those were created, you can see the symbols, and each of them it's a component on its own, feel free to check, yeah, in your assets panel. Let's think a bit on how we can maybe create some variant. I have this window and it kind of looks like lights are out, like people are not home. And I would like to have another window with lights on, yeah, the yellow one, but I don't want to create a new component. No, so I could just go up here and say add variant. Now adding a variant will put this purple frame around that initial window, and over here on the left side you will have the default, basically the initial component, and Figma says, hey, this is your second variant. Now you don't have to stick with those names, you can just double click and say the lights off to give it more human understandable name, and this can be light on. Select the light on, and to this one I do want to have a different field just for you to see the difference. Okay, and now because I have those two options, if I would go in my design, I can just, yeah, from up here change from the property light on. Okay, just like that. I could select whatever window I want, whatever instance, and switch the light on or off. So basically that's the idea of having a variant. Now having a property, well, again, is not that difficult. Let's think for a second that some windows might not have this base, so I might want to remove this one in some cases. So I would basically select it over here, go to the right, where it says layer, have this create Boolean property. Boolean property is like a true or false. Does it appear or it's invisible? I'm gonna click on it, and I'm just gonna name it show base and set it to true. Create property. Now when this property is created, it will appear down here, and on an instance, yeah, let's move to position, I start to have this toggle button. Okay, and the toggle button has the name which I gave it, show base. I can just turn it on or off. Yeah, easy as that. You can see how it looks without, with, but keep in mind this won't happen for the variant because I only applied this thing on the initial, yeah, on the default. If I want to have it on the variant also, yeah, I need to go find the window base on the variant, go to the layer property and apply show base, just like that, because I already defined it. I don't need to create another property, and it should have the same name. So now when I select a variant, okay, with the light on, I can control it from here. So that's, like a very brief introduction to properties, because you also have text properties, as I'm gonna show you in some other tutorial. Okay guys, just to wrap things up, I went ahead and replaced all the balconies and the windows with components which I created. Of course, we talked about the variants and seeing them applied on that window, and I also created a variant for the balconies. First one is pointing direction left, direction right. Second one, and I still have the old model of that window as a component. So now having those deployed, yeah, here on my building, I could just for example, if I want to revert back to the old ones, I can swap them from here because they're also a component, just like that. I can control the direction of the balcony, pointing right, pointing left. So that's about swapping component. And to also show you the nesting of the components, let's say that we want to grab the whole building and make a component out of this one. Okay, and I'm just gonna hit the shortcut Control Alt K, and you can see it became a component. Okay, now it's gonna be available over here, so I could easily instantiate it, but this component has other components inside. Actually, the instances, you can see them here. So because of that, if you would want to change one of those instances, you need to refer back to its master component. So I would select, let's say, this window, first one on the right, and from this menu, I can say go to main component. I can make the changes on the main component, and all of the others will get the update. That's the correct way of doing it. So it's a thing of best practice. Then again, we're going to talk about components in other episodes, so do feel free to subscribe, like the video, and I'm gonna see you in the next one.